The bids are in, the gavel is dropped. Ladies and gentlemen, here at WineBid, we are finally hammered. That's right, this is WineBid's podcast dedicated to all things wine value, wine auction, wine retail, and, well, just wine. My name is Jeff Gurr, and I work here on the WineBid marketing team. With me, as always, is our wine expert and wine auction expert, and I really want to underline wine expert and bold it and italicize it and make it all caps. Paul Walker.
Jeff, I like how every week you come up with a new way to embarrass me and say something that's totally a fallacy.
It actually takes me a whole week to plan out the way to embarrass you the following week. I spend the most time figuring out how to embarrass you. This episode,
I appreciate that.
No problem. This episode, of course, is our wine auction recap episode. And I want to jump right in because there's some interesting stuff to recap. We have I don't know if this is a record, but I think Pulsar might be climbing up in the commodities market right now.
Did this secretly get like a top number one, like a revote of the number one Spectator wine?
Yeah, Wine Spectator must have issued some sort of correction.
Like, no, wait a minute.
From like from 2017.
It's all Jura. It's like they were like, this is the wine.
Did we say Sassicaia? We were just kidding. 6 years ago, what we meant was Domaine Labay, Pulsard, and it went from $30 to $170 after 12 bids.
Yeah, that's a lot of bids on a single bottle, and that's quite a range from $30 to. I mean, I was reading about these wines actually because we've talked about Jura wines. We always talk about Ganabat like every week. Although I think this might be the first week there's no new Ganabat in. But anyway, Labay apparently is like extremely allocated, not just to retailers, but to brokers. People were actually selling it in this country. And so it's really, really hard to get. So obviously somebody wanted to, fill out a gap in their collection. I
can't believe I let you talk. Like a few years ago, I let Paul talk me out of buying 1,200 cases of Labay. and that was the worst decision. And he was
1,200 cases.
It's never going anywhere.
There's probably not even 100 cases of
this. Paul said to me, he's like, it'll never be worth more than $30 a bottle, Jeff, ever. And here we are, Paul. He said he would eat his hat if it ever got above $30 a bottle. And we're at 170 now. We've got the 09 Henri Gauge Nuit Saint-Georges, which
Chen Carteau. Don't forget
the Chen Carteau. Yes, the Chen Carteau. This one, 5 of them would start at $45 a bottle. 9 bids took them to $71 a bottle.
Yeah, I think I'm pretty sure this is another wine that I mentioned last week.
Yeah,
it's a great red vintage, and I want to say there was some other. There might even have been 99. No, I'm thinking there was another wine from 99. Another kind of like ones and twos. Interesting to see 5 of these, and not too surprised. 45 seemed cheap to me to start for sure. Like that didn't seem like, that seemed underpriced. So that seems kind of in line. That's not too crazy.
No, 45, I think would have been just a steal. So to see it up in the $70 range is probably about where it should be. Yeah. 2017, this is another one I believe we mentioned. Alice et Olivier d'Amour Bourgogne Aligoté started at 35.
This is a little surprising. Yeah, that's a little surprising because we talked about the Chablis wines that they produce, and they come in fairly often. They're sought after and rare, but we see them. But the Aligoté, maybe it's just a factor of the fact that it's really not available. Whereas the Chablis, they're around, but the Aligoté, no, that seems pretty interesting. $60 for Aligoté. Well, but then, this kind of thing is happening all over the place in Burgundy these days.
Well, let's look at another example. 2017 Domaine Chanterev Burgogne started at 25, hammered at 51.
Yeah, that's really interesting because I didn't know. I've heard of this producer and I've seen the wines, but I had no idea someone was going to bid it up to that level. 7 bids, yes. So A lot of action on that thing.
That was quite a bit. Another 7 bids went to an O2 Panay Aigri de Panay Extra Brut. $30 is where it started. Some bids took it at 72.
Rare stuff. Yeah. Rare stuff for sure.
Very rare.
Never
stuff.
see it again.
This is another one. I had the opportunity to buy a few thousand cases at $30 a bottle. Paul talked me out of it. Obviously,
well,
I should have
last
listened
time it was
to
an
my
auction
guts.
was in 2016, and you could have bought, let's see, 2, 3, 4 bottles. Actually, no, you could have bought one bottle at $30, and the other two looks like the other ones went for 40. So,
I don't know why I don't know why I keep letting you talk me out of this stuff, Paul. 1997, Robert Ampu Merceau Carmez. Ampo
Merceau Chaum.
Whoops. Chaum.
Not Carmez.
Chaum. 7 bids, took it from 75 to 130. We had 3 of those.
That's an interesting one too. I think Ampo wines are they seem to be, getting more and more attention again. I don't believe, never sold this wine before last week. So that's a rare one. And I think that's probably the only vintage of Merceau Charme from Ampo we've actually ever sold. So that's a rare one. What
about this 78 Domaine Robert Arnaud Von Romani?
Yeah, so this is the wine. It's funny. This is the wine I was saying that we had seen. I think it was. I think I should look back. No, we'd seen a version of this wine, a Premier Cru Von Romani from 82 or 83, and it got bid way up, way up. I think it started at something like $70 and got bid up to $350. So similarly, we mentioned last week that very thing. We said, well, hey, you're never going to see our new wine again. And then all of a sudden there's late 70, or was it 78? And I think there was a 71 Von Romani Premier Cru, but the 78, that is fascinating. 180 to 421.
Wow.
Yeah, that's cool. So I guess it's the finally hammered effect. It's happening right and left.
It's right before our eyes. It is the finally hammer effect. We had this was a 2014 Dominio del Aguila. Ribera del Duero. This one, 6 bids, took it from 70 to 170, just over 170.
Yeah, that's pretty surprising, right? Because there seems to be all kinds of deals in Spain, and especially in Ribera del Duero. But
seems to have been all kinds of deals in Spain. I think the word is out that Spain makes some phenomenal wine, and it is priced very competitively.
Yeah, this looks like some serious stuff. I see they have a wax top, really kind of cool artistic label with an illustration on it. So I'd be curious to know what's going on here. There's also looks like a unique identifier under the Reserva and on the basically beneath the wax top. So there's probably a lot of seriousness going on here. Anyway,
I think so.
Rare. That's another rare one.
Rare stuff, and then the other one that I'll mention before we jump over to some of the heavy hitters. Actually, I'll mention 2 more. We had a non-vintage Manuel Eugenio for Ferrandes Verdelho, more than 40 years Madeira. This one, 6 bids, took it from 75 to 320.
Yeah, that's interesting because there was a bunch of stuff from Portugal and Madeira in last week. We didn't get a chance to even touch on Portugal. We didn't get a chance to touch on anything from the rest of Europe. We just got stuck in France, but there were all kinds of because I follow these things just on my own, and there were all kinds of 20, 30, 40. I think there was even a 100-year-old tawny or something from maybe oh gosh, I'm spacing on the producer. Anyway, this
Portugal.
I'm trying to remember.
It's from Portugal. That's where.
Well, I know it's from Portugal.
Well, you just said you didn't know.
I said producer.
Tawny, and I don't know where it's from.
Producer.
So I'm just educating you on
where
port comes from, where Tawny comes from. Yeah.
Well, that's Jeff. This bottle reminds me of you. Everyone says, "How old is Jeff?" Well, more than 40 years of age. Sorry, it was just too easy. It's too easy. It's right in front of me. So anyway, I do like that. It's very vague. It's like you look at the bottle, it says like 40. I was like, no, wait a minute, more than 40 years of age.
I feel like that's like when you see a sign and someone's like, I'm in the I'm one of the top 15 realtors in San Fran, in the Bay Area or whatever. And you're like, okay, so you're number 15. Because if you're number one, you never say I'm in the top 15. You're like, I'm number one. So what that means when they say more than 40, so it's like 40 years in a day. Like everything is exactly, that's like the old, because
age here is what you want generally, so,
right. But I mean,
you're saying, I see. You're saying that like it
was like 60-year-old
over
stuff.
40 years.
Yeah. If they had 60-year-old stuff,
it's not put in like 80 or 100 year. It's just,
they would put in more than 60.
Well, right? 6 bidders decided it was worth a lot more than $75. So they paid, more than $75.
They paid more than $75. The other thing is this is where my marketing expertise comes into play here, Paul, because marketers did that, and 100% it's like 41-year-old stuff. That's it. Right. Max 41-year-old.
Would you say it's worth max $320 or not? Or would you be careful?
I think this one could be on a rocket ship to the moon. The next time
wow.
you see
Okay.
this.
All right. You heard Jeff's investment. See, that's what I'm going to start calling you.
No, I'm not investing.
Jeff is your wine investment expert.
Jeff, who has made precisely no money off of wine. Like I've never made a dime off of it. In fact, it's only ever cost me money by going into my belly.
So it's an intellectual investment is what it is.
It's an intellectual investment. It's an investment in my happiness. 1998 Palmery Brut Louise.
Oh yeah, you mentioned this because you're like you told me that I didn't like it was the first thing I think you said. You're like, you probably hate this wine. Yeah. And I said, you're wrong. It's great, especially the 90. I have to say I haven't had it in a long time because it seems like one of those wines you just don't see anymore. But
You know what's funny is I mean, look, Paul Marie is an exceedingly large champagne house.
Yeah,
like they're a very large champagne house, and you do like I feel like I used to see them more.
Do you see the blue?
The blue, label? Yeah.
And you see those little bottles.
The pops.
You see them. Yeah, exactly. They're
pops
everywhere. They're everywhere. But like the Luis, I feel like you'd see the Luis in a lockup case in high end markets or something. Because. There's got to be a decent amount of it around, but
even then, I feel like you just don't like a lot of the high end, even places that have high end lockers. I feel like I rarely see Cuvée Louise.
Yeah, no, I agree.
You don't see it around a lot.
No, it's not.
But it's tremendously delicious juice. Like it's so good.
It's good stuff.
And it's got a lot of acidity, so I feel like it's got good ageability. I'd be really curious to try this 98 from whoever bought it. I mean, it started at 100, 6 bids, took them to about 150 is where they hammered. But this is just tremendously delicious juice. Let's talk about some of the expensive stuff, right? Some of the more expensive stuff that hammered. This is one that I think we mentioned, 09 6-bottle lot OWC of Petrus, which I know we're not supposed to say this is exceedingly rare, like, 6-bottle OWC cases of Petrus are growing on trees. Like, you just don't see this stuff very often. I mean, I just remember
I'll say you'll see it more often than La Baie. You're not going to find a 6-bottle case of La Baie. If you do, it might not go for $22,000, but it'll go for a little bit.
It'll go for some good money. But this 6-bottle lot OWC of Petrus, 09 Petrus, 22,740 is what it hammered at, and I'm hoping that's just a late birthday present from you. But I'm going to not look at whoever won that just in case. I don't want to ruin your surprise.
Okay.
We had 2019 Screaming Eagle Sauvignon Blanc. Sauvignon Blanc.
There it is.
3-bottle lot. There it is. $10,425 OWC. Wow, that's got to be some phenomenal Sauvignon Blanc.
And you don't not often seen in the wood. We see the single bottles in, I think there's some more this week, but not too often do you see it in the wood cases.
You don't. We also had some 2-bottle lot of 1980 Jaillet Echezot. This one, $79.50 for 2 bottles. That was interesting to see both of those. And then a 6-bottle lot OBC of Own Mouton for $44.95. So anything. I'll also mention, this is what I wanted to mention, but we didn't get to it. The 07 3-liter of Masseto.
Did that sell last week?
$5.55. Yeah, that sold last week.
Yeah.
One that I can't remember if we actually got to that or not, but it was one that I've been keeping track of.
No, I don't think we got out of France last week. I think we were so overwhelmed with wine that we never made it out of the country. But there was all kinds of crazy stuff in last week.
There was all kinds of crazy stuff from Italy, and there was a ton of large format, particularly like I believe a lot of Masseto large format that
they're
like
mags.
really surprised
I think there were
at.
actually more than one 3-liter, which is wild.
Yes.
There was Sassicaia, there was Tignanello, all kinds of crazy stuff last week
in large and a lot of it in like large format, like 3 in mags and 3 liters and stuff, which you just, I mean, I knock on wood here, you don't see that a lot, right? No. Like that stuff doesn't come across every day, but somebody was a big collector of that and they just, they decided to let it go. Anything in particular that you thought was interesting?
No, I think we mentioned some of the standouts that are new, kind of made me laugh. I didn't think it was going to go up to $421, but there was some Antica Terra Rosé that stuff is on fire right now. It's got bid up from 70 to 110. More
of it in auction. We've got some more Antica Terra coming in auction.
Yeah, isn't there like maybe another bottle of the rosé in this week or something?
I think
there is.
I can tell you what it is because I noted it. Yeah, it is the rosé. It's the Arabica rosé of Pinot Noir. And by the way,
Angelic Cali,
It already has 4 bids.
Oh wow!
So it already has 4 bids.
What's it up to?
It's up to 63. It was at 45. It's now at 63. At least when I checked it earlier. So
this stuff is really going for it, which is interesting. So anyway, it's interesting to watch this, rosé go for over $100 from a, small producer up in Oregon. That's always something to keep an eye on because I'm sure now it's going to push their Pinot Noir and Chardonnay prices. I would imagine more. There was some Kalen that got bid up, not too much, but obviously this stuff has a following. It was a 95 Chardonnay Cuvée CH, started at 40, hammered at 60, which is not a lot of money for a California Chardonnay, but Kalen clearly is, still having, I think, a moment. I believe the proprietor passed away not too long ago, sadly, but these wines were always they had this following for a long time, and they were kind of interesting in the sense that they didn't release them for a long time until, years after vintage and all sorts of, let's just call it natural winemaking philosophies before it was a thing. And so that's kind of neat to see those, come about. There were some Santa Cruz Mountains wines. I was kind of bummed we didn't get to talk about California last week because there were all these really interesting rarities. And Santa Cruz Mountain Vineyards, which is a very generic sounding name, but is a winery that I believe, if it still exists, it's not what it was, but there were some old, like mid-80s Pinot Noirs and Cabernets. And there was this Bates Ranch 86 Santa Cruz Mountain Vineyard Cab, started at 50, hammered at 71, nothing crazy, but I think these are becoming more and more and more collectible because I'm not going to compare them to Montebello or anything like that, but they are.
Like, where are you going with this, Paul? Be careful.
Well, they're still, I would imagine these would eclipse $100 before too long if they come up again. They're not exceedingly rare, but they don't come into auction every week like some of the other things that we see.
I mean, look, we know Santa Cruz has the potential to make some phenomenal wine.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It's actually surprising to me that Montebello seems to be maybe I'm crazy, but it seems to be you know a lot about the stuff more than I do, but it seems to be one of the only, like, the big name out of Santa Cruz, which maybe is a little surprising. You would think there would be some other vineyards that would, pop up and be able to make a name for themselves. And maybe that's what we're seeing.
Yeah, it's true. And I don't know. Well, I don't know what happened to Santa Cruz Mountain Vineyards. I would imagine that the fruit is I know Bates Ranch is still being harvested by other producers, or maybe it's owned by somebody else entirely now, but it's Cabernet that I believe is made. Of course, I have no idea who makes it now, but there's not a lot of vineyard property down there. And so it's rare to begin with, but yeah, you're right. You'd imagine that there'd be other names from the area that were, selling, 3-figure Cabernets, but maybe not. Maybe Ridge found the sweet spot or something. I don't know.
The only other one would be like,
well, Mount Eden is not far behind. If you ask me, the Old Vines Cab they make is incredibly good, and the Chardonnay is amazing. So I think they're up there. But yeah, there's not a whole lot of other stuff that I know about.
Reese is up there, right? Reese has
Reese is nearby, and actually I have some picks from the current week. So real quick, there was also this wine called I think it's Halcon, Halcon, small producer, and there was a 13 Tierra Theopolis Petite Syrah that was in last week. Started at 20 and got bid up to 53, and that was pretty wild because I know that this winery has a little bit of a following, and I didn't even know they made wine back in 2013. I thought it was much younger producer, but anyway, fun to see stuff like that. You just definitely don't see all the time. And like I said, there was a bunch of interesting port and all kinds of cool champagne last week. So yeah, I think that was about it.
All right, then let's wrap this up with WineBid's auction recap on Finally Hammered. This has been Jeff Begert and Paul Walker wishing you happy bidding and cheers.
Cheers.